So hello everybody. As briefly described by Florians, we are motivated to do this sort of studies about data-driven business model just to understand how organization can drive revenue streams out of the data as a key resource. We've done a previous study about how startups were innovative and drive new business models through using different sorts of data and drive some analytics and get a lot of revenue stream out of it. And today's presentation is actually we would like to get some understanding how established organization try to get some revenues out of the data to capitalize on the data that they own itself. So we're gonna share some insights from our research about this, um, and hopefully it could be insightful for you as well. So um, a lot of established organizations try to capitalize on their own data just to keep competitive in their landscape. But there are a couple of challenges around that. Actually, which data they should, extract and how, and actually how they're going to refine it, and how they could ensure its quality to drive better insights. And our observations that organizations that might be failed to align themselves within these data-driven practices, they could risk their survival with the market and also their market shares and their competitive advantage against their competitors. So to be honest, the study itself has a clear questions about how does big data affect data-driven business model within these big firms. And we would like to demonstrate the validity of the previous study, which we introduced what we called a data-driven business model, or like an abbreviation called DDBM Framework, that could be applied within the established organization itself. And we would like to validate whether it is going to be the same framework that is being used by the startups, it's going to be different in the established organizations, and if it is different, what are the different dimensions that we should add on this. And hopefully by the end of this webinar, we're going to come up with a structured guidelines we think that could be helpful to make established organizations or even SMEs to analyze their practices around the data-driven business models. So the methodology that we used to get these patterns of established organizations specifically, we get 20 companies across 5 specific industry. We collected secondary data from their websites, annual reports, press release, second case studies, some newspapers, and all sort of secondary material, just to help us analyze how different established organizations in different industry and could use the data to drive some business models. We use some analytical software called InVivo just to help us to do some thematic analysis. And we validate that by a questionnaire at the end of the study just to validate basically the findings. So this is the company classification table. So we have in the finance, we have HSBC, Merrill Lynch, and Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs. For insurance, Admiral, and all sorts of things. You can see this kind of quite famous established organization in main 5 sectors, which is finance, insurance, and publishing, retail, and telecommunications. And we tried to study these 20 companies to see how they try to use the data practices to come up with new services for their organization and some new revenue stream as well. I'm just giving an example of the different sectors. For example, in the insurance, Admirals and Allstate Insurance, ING Direct, all of them trying to use the customer providing the data, try to combine it with free available data as well, just to manage the risk about the insurance claim that comes from their customers. In the retail space as well, you can see that they can use the online transactions that come from the customer over the websites and target some advertising according to the preferences of the customer that are using specific products in the website. Then actually they are using the purchasing data as well to determine the current trends and the styles that could be help the industry to understand the new trends and the new design of products that customer like to buy. In the telecommunications, actually, it's interesting. They've been using the GPS, especially AT&T. They've been using the GPS tracking systems, selling that to government planner just to enable accurate forecasting for some public events or traffic simulation. In the publishing, specifically Financial Times, New York, they've been using the online survey just to understand the preferences of the reading habits across the users and basically try to do some recommendations to suggested articles for according to the reader preferences, basically. Then the finance, they've been using the predictive modeling to understand some investments and risk assessments. This is just a quick, how the data-driven business model been using in different sectors, but we'll go in details now to show how the study is being using across the DDBM framework. So in this screen now, this is a previous framework we introduced in the previous papers when we said how actually the startups are using this framework to drive some business model. So you can see here very quickly, you can see the data sources. That's the main thing, just to have as a key resource with your organization. It could be internal data. So you have your current databases, your current CRM systems, ERP system, or you could generate it through crowdsource or tracking systems. Or you could have external data, which could be free available, like social media, open data, crawl data from different websites, or the customer provided to you, or you buy it, you acquire it actually from different outlets. Then you've got the activity. So you have the data sources now. You mix it up with other kind of data, either internal or external. But you now have some activities around it, which is a chain of aggregations. You can aggregate it. You develop some analytics. Also, it could be descriptive, predictive, prescriptive. You process it, visualize, and you give some accessibility to your customer. Then you have some offering. Either you offer the data itself as a raw, or it could be have some insights, which is in that terms could be interpreted into informations and knowledge or non-data product and service. Then you have to get some revenue stream. Most of the organization was trying, okay, I'm using these activities, I got these insights. There are some revenue streams should come out of it, something like asset sales, lending, advertisements, etc. Then all the time they have some specific cost advantage out of it, because you might buy the infrastructures, you might have this stuff, you might have investing in some cost, basically. Then you've got the target customers, which is ideally B2B or B2C. When we use that kind of framework against the 20 companies of the established organization, how that going to be different? So to be honest, it's not a big differences, unless we have another 2 new main dimensions has been added. So always the organizations has an objective, an outcome, why they want to use the data to drive new business models or to do some analytics. Especially appearing in the established organization, it's always about competitive advantage, either to be shorten the supply chain, or it's a matter of branding and reputations because I'm big organizations. It's a differentiation between me and my competitors. It's a consolidations, it's an expansions. Process speeding is specifically in the finance because algorithms need to crunch a lot of data and basically be fast as much as possible. And the other part is about investments, how to find some resources internally or externally to basically invest inside these kind of data analytics activities within organization. And cyclical reinvestments, it appears as well within organizations. It looks like the organization can lend a specific department inside internally to do the data analytics activities. Then they expect some revenue streams out of it to return on investment to be cyclical again inside the organization. This is some statistics, general statistic very quickly across the sectors and where are the competitive advantages appears mostly within these 20 companies that we are investigating in these studies. You can see that the brand and differentiations was the highest percentage over the company, which being considered very important. the differentiations, it's quite important specifically in retail and publishing and insurance, and process speed, like I said before, in the finance sectors. What kind of data sources these 20 companies are heavily used? It's across. It's vary. It's from different multiple sources. You can see self-generated data, existing data, free available data has been mixed together just to generate new insights for their customers. And it looks like the self-generated data is quite heavily in the telecommunication and retail. And there were consistent use of whatever the customers is giving to the organizations through different sectors as mostly as well being heavily used as a main data source for organization. In terms of activities, it's again vary. It's mostly in these organizations, the analytics are quite heavy because basically that's the main thing about the big data. Specifically in the publishing sectors, is descriptive analytics is quite predominant. Finance sector is actually quite advanced in terms of predictive analytics because of risk assessments and etc. Retail is quite as well advanced as well, using different dashboard, different analytics perspective as well. In terms of revenue models, it looks like mostly of these organizations relying on advertisement as a main business model to generate data, to generate some insights and generate some revenues. Specifically in telecommunication again, and retail, publishing, insurance. But the finance sector itself is relying on lending and renting or leasing kind of way to generate some revenue stream out of the data. And you can see it doesn't have to have the main revenue model for the established organization. It's just the data analytics services could just generate different way of revenue model, which is away from the current revenue model of this organization. So when we did the validations, we did like a survey. We got some elite kind of interview with quite range elite product directors, CTO, CIO, CEOs in these different 5 sectors, just to understand is our secondary analysis is correct and giving the right measurements and the right analysis. And basically, we in the percentage here, you can see across the same 5 basically industries that the study was focusing on. The study was focusing on. In terms of the patterns generally, you can see across the framework that the finance, this is like the patterns. For the finance, they are heavily used. Most of them are branding is quite important in the majority of the companies as a competitive advantage. They've been using different sources of data, especially the self-generated data or the customer providing data as a main source of the data sources. Mostly the investments come from internal organizations. The key activities are quite around data and descriptive analytics, predictive analytics. The offering might be data or non-data products. The revenue stream, most heavily advertisements to B2C kind of target customers. But what the difference between the previous study, which is about the DDBM startups and DDBM established, it looks like the competitive advantage is quite heavily in the branding for the established. Startups is not there because we didn't capture that in the previous study. Heavily, the data sources are the customer provided in the startups and free available data. Here, the customer provided and acquired data from the customer as well. Investments, to be honest, comes from external, I think, from the startups, but it's heavily internally from the established organizations. Key activities are analytics, offering normally information and knowledge in terms of startup because of their capabilities to be innovative and give some insights for established organization. However, established organizations try to provide non-data product or kind of service innovation for what they have from these data. Normally, from the 20 companies that we had, advertising established, like I said, and subscription fee was predominant in the startups. Target customers is B2B, again is B2C to established organization. In terms of challenges, with different of challenges, you can say that acquiring data source quite from the startups quite heavily. Not there, analytical skills, some resource issues because of the investments, some barriers due to practicality. But again, it's established organization, all sort of Soft issues are there, like culture challenges, personnel issues, value perceptions. And from the hard perspective is how you can access the data. You have access to the data, but actually how you integrate it and make a better quality out of it. And there are correlations between the personnel issues might be the root cause for other main hindrances to achieve a DDBM. And when we say personnel issues, how to recruit the right data science to interpret the data, but the problem is that he has the domain skills as well that could give some insights for your customers around it, which is quite challenges for these people that answer the survey. So in summary, so after these studies, we came up with DDBM Innovation Blueprint. So because we had the study of the startups, how they be innovative to drive new business models, and actually how established organizations try to catch up to innovate in their services and actually come up with some revenue stream out of the data that they sit on. So we came up with an integrated framework just to help both to stimulate some discussions when organizations would like to understand what they have to do with the data that they have. So you might need to think about what is the target outcome to provide some analytics out of the data. Is it product service improvement? Is it a competitive advantage questions against your competitors? You would like to increase your market share, you get some customer insight. What is your outcome from using this innovation, basically? Then what you would like to offer and to whom as well from your customers. And is it data as a raw? Because there is no others organizations develop the data as a raw. I mean, the data is quite unique, so you would like to provide it, or you would like to come up with some insights regarding to the information and knowledge, or it's kind of service innovations basically on non-data products. Then you might need to think, okay, if I would like to develop this specific target outcome and this offering, what kind of data sources I might need to focus about? Is it going to be internal or external, or both of them, or integrated, integration between both of them? Then what kind of activities over this chains of aggregations, analytics, acquisitions, predictive, prescriptive analytics? And we can't forget the revenue models, because that's basically the motivation for organizations to put some investments and some resources to get some revenue stream out of the data. But while you think about that exercise, you might need to think about what challenges you might face as well while you develop this data-driven business model, because you can start the innovation part, and because you have the capability, you have the investments, but actually you have a lot of problems that could face you. That could be soft issues like culture problem, personnel issues, your customer not appreciating that, can't demonstrate the value for them. Then there are another bunch of problems like regarding to the hard issues, which is the data could be available or not, the data quality and problem, the data quality and the integrity problem, then the insights itself, how you can drive it, is then the legal issues, then some data privacy, then resources, or any practicality around it. So there are a lot of challenges, to be honest, that could face you while you are innovative and could stop you implementing the data-driven business model, which is worthy to think about. Then we came up with, okay, if any organization would like to go with this practicality, they might need to ask themselves 6 main questions, which is aligned with the framework I just presented before. So if you think about the target outcomes, it's about what are we trying to achieve? And also the offering is about what is the desired offering you would like to get from these data. And which data you would like to acquire, how we can acquire it, and what kind of activities, and how we can monetize it, and what are the barriers. And we try to translate that back within the organizations that we had, even with a startup. I put some examples here. It's not the full analysis, but just to explain the point. So for example, Zara, in the established organizations, like I said before, they would like to use some customer insight to understand the new trends and the new trends. So they mix it with the Twitter data, free available data with their customers, and provide some analytics to help on this. However, there are some challenges they've been facing, like culture problems, value perception as well of the DDBM. I'm going to take an example of the startups. For example, Guild. So Guild is a recruitment company who are using free available data like Google Code, which is coders try to publish their best practice of coding, and they've been using algorithm to understand where are the best coder within these best practices. And when company would like to recruit a professional coder, they can recommend him one through this. So they've been using that as a market share to increase their market shares. They have some insights. They've been using free available data, and they've been subscribing model, but they might face some legal challenges as well through data privacy and etc. So that's for me the presentation. Hopefully, I covered everything.